am really excited to be joined this morning by Mike Dennis. I will say in a confession to my listeners here on Pulling Focus that Mike was actually my very first guest on Pulling Focus nearly 3 years ago. And it was great. And we had an amazing conversation. And the show never recorded. So it was basically the show that never was. So I'm really excited to have an opportunity to have a redo with Mike here in the WPPM Studios. He is a filmmaker and film promoter, graduate of both NYU and the American Film Institute. He has made short films and documentaries that have won awards and screened around the world. And he is founder of Reelblack, which is a production company based here in Philly, which produces entertainment news magazine, bits that air on Philly Cam and originally on Drexel University TV. And he has partnered with YouTube on his Reelblack TV channel that has over, I guess, 5 million views. And since starting Reelblack screening series in 2002, he has screened or promoted over 900 films. And we're going to talk a little bit about Reelblack. We're going to talk about some of Mike's filmmaking, and we're going to talk about an upcoming screening that he's going to be hosting featuring the film Putney, Swope, directed by Robert Downey Sr. So with all that, happy to welcome Mike Dennis into the studio.
I guess this is a full circle moment for sure. Thank you, Gretchen. I owe my whole career.
Oh, stop it.
To Gretjen Clausing. But yeah, so I guess it's an old bio because we're at we just crossed our 300,000 subscriber mark at the beginning of last month, and we're currently averaging about 4 million views a month.
This is on YouTube.
On YouTube, yeah. Now on Philly Cam, we still are on every Thursday night. I think at 8:30, if I'm not mistaken. Mm-hmm. There's a new show every month. Okay,
cool. And for listeners who may not be aware, WPPM is based at Philly Cam, which is Philadelphia's public access television station, where Mike was one of the first producers to bring his content over here to have it shared on our cable channel.
Indeed. Now I'm in the midst of an identity crisis. So are we speaking to Michael J. Dennis or Mike D. or Mike Dennis?
I will let you dictate.
I've gotten in trouble being Mike D. So just control me if.
Okay. Well, and it's funny because maybe what we're going to do this morning is kind of go through little bits of where how we know each other and kind of the work that you have done here in the city of Philadelphia. But why don't we start first with when I first met you was as a filmmaker.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And so I'm trying to think whether it was one of your early films.
Well, you'd seen Philly Boy, and you invited me to screen at the Prince. And
it's those peas.
And that was the beginning of the Reelblack PRESENTS, because I think we sold out that MC Breeze documentary, and about 3 or 4 months later, you invited me to curate a monthly event. So, and those were the first 3 or 4 shows were free, and they were standing room only, and it just was. I always had a love for film, and that was 2003. That was season 1. So it was when some of the classic black films were just starting to come out on DVD, and people had not seen them for over a decade. So we started off with Claudine, and then we did That's the Way of the World and things like that. And people, it was like a discovery for them, and also Philly was in the midst of a big cultural revolution as far as black stuff. Black Lily was going on, and everybody was very Afrocentric at that time. So it was just a perfect storm, and we rode that wave until this November. All
right. Well, we'll wait. We're going to get to that.
Okay.
So, but let's go back. Okay. But yeah, I want to go back. So
sure.
You grew up here in Philly.
Yes.
And you went to NYU and studied film. So how did you get there? Like, what made you want to study film?
I've been in love with movies. I think the movie bug bit me at around age 11. By 13, I was very much aware of what filmmakers were doing. I was like a savant. There were very few books about film available at that time. So you had the Ephraim Katz Film Encyclopedia and Leonard Maltin Guide, and I literally would read those the way Malcolm X read the dictionary when he was in prison. I would read them at night, and I just had a savant. So when the local video store opened around the corner from me, I had virtually encyclopedic knowledge of film, and then that became sort of like working at the library if you love books, and got to take movies home, and just had all that available. And then I guess timing, Spike Lee and Robert Townsend came out. I mean, before Spike Lee and Robert Townsend, I just assumed I would follow in the footsteps of like a John Hughes, and then but at that time there were literally only 2 or 3 legitimate film schools in the whole country. It was USC, UCLA, NYU. Those were the top places, and Temple University, of course. And I just happened to apply. Before you needed a resume, before the following year, they changed all the rules to get in. So somehow, just on the basis of my grades and my interest, I was able to get into NYU, and it was a great time. But that also awakened my, as being in New York in the late 70s, you're exposed to a lot of culture as well. So Public Enemy and KRS-One and all that stuff comes into play, and then you feel like you're in rarefied air. There's no other. It's like you feel like you're Noah's Ark. There's literally like 2 other black people in the whole school. So that's when the responsibility comes into play as far as why should I just emulate what's being done? Why all this culture is not being expressed in film? Let me figure out a way to sort of morph. Sort of like August Wilson and hip hop and comedy and stuff. So I've been kind of working at that for a long time.
Oh, and I mean, you had been, I know you as primarily a documentary filmmaker.
Yeah.
So has you initially thought about doing narrative and then shifted to
the brainwashing was in place? Yeah. I mean, the first day of NYU, Chris Columbus comes in, and he's like the most recent graduate, and he just made Adventures in Babysitting, produced by John Hughes. So he's like, well, if the way I got that job was I made a half-hour film, agents saw it, and now I'm in Hollywood. And of course, Chris Columbus went on to forge his own path with like Almost Famous and things like that. So and that's a typical film school advantage where alumni come every week. There's a guest, and you get to pick their brains about how to forge a path. So. Yeah, for the longest time, and it's still in my head, I want to do narrative, but the most expedient thing, when I got my own equipment, after worked on Beloved here and then worked at KYW for 2 years as an editor, then the next movement happens, which is digital video and the ability for everybody to kind of, on consumer priced equipment, do professional quality video work. The most expedient thing was documentary, so that I just following people around, and my initial passion was hip hop. So as a high schooler, I'd listen to MC Breeze and Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince and all, and Schoolie D and Ken Burns' Jazz had just come out, and I said, well, why should we wait for PBS? All these people are still around. It would be great to tell their story. So we started on that path, and music rights and all that stuff. We ended up making an hour-long documentary about MC Breeze, who was one of the unsung heroes of the Philadelphia independent music scene in the late 80s.
Well, speaking of MC Breeze, I'm just going to play a little something which... anyway, I'm going to just give people a taste. I don't think this is from a period maybe slightly later, but I got a kick out of it just because the video is so great, and it is in the Rocky V soundtrack.
Go for it.
All right, here we go. Played that because I am in conversation with filmmaker and film curator and promoter Mike Dennis from Reelblack, and you had made a documentary about MC.
I'm a factotum, according to Charles Woods. One of the first things that I did when I had my own equipment was set out to tell stories here in Philly, artists that had not had their stories told before. And, MC Breeze was one of them. I think the first 2 years I had my mini DV equipment, I made 5 films, and they all played in festivals around the country. So I was excited, but then I didn't realize at the same time I bought my camera, everybody else on the planet was buying cameras too, and it was going to be a lot more static. I couldn't necessarily follow the Chris Columbus path of doing a 20-minute film and having everybody immediately see the talent. But enough people do, so that it opens the next door. And travel was a big piece of that, being able to go across the country and see other people's work, and then see that there was a void here in Philadelphia for a film festival. There was nothing. All this stuff is happening related to black film and culture, and none of it's reaching our audiences. So that's sort of how we made the connection to start the Reelblack Presents screening series.
Right, because around the time that you're referring to, so this would have been
2003.
Right, and then you were making other work documenting the Philly music scene, because Philly was
a partner of mine, Daryl DeBress, who would come into the video store. He was getting equipment at the same time. He's like, you should check out the Black Lily. Down at we're right around the corner from where we are now, on 2nd and Bank Street. So I'd read an article in the Weekly about how it was the hot place to go every Tuesday night, but I was very introverted at the time. I didn't like to go out and I'm a wallflower, So having a camera and being able to literally be in the front row at every show and get to know these people was a great experience.
So for folks who don't know, what was Black Lily?
Black Lily was a weekly event that happened every Tuesday night that was founded by the Jazzy Fat Nasties, which were under the umbrella of the Roots. It was a female duo, Mercedes Martinez and Tracy Moore. And what they decided when they got their advance money from MCA Records, rather than do tour, spot date to promote their album, they were going to take the resources that were given to them, and with Rich Nichols, who was sort of the mastermind of the whole Roots crew, they were going to basically replicate the jam sessions that were happening at Questlove's house, but gear it towards women. And so basically it was an open mic for a lot of the up-and-coming talent. So we had the opportunity to capture at very early stages of their career Kindred the Family Soul, Jaguar Wright, Jazzy Fat Nasties, of course, Jasmine Sullivan. The Roots would pop in from time to time, and then they had all kinds of guests, so there was we still have this great archive of material that I hope we can turn into something substantial. It would be great for more people to know how to create a cultural scene, So been sitting on that for a little while, because I think it just can't be something you dump on YouTube. It's a very important. There's a strategy involved. Rich Nichols and them were the king of that. So when the time is right, we'll put that together. All
right. Well, let's take a listen to something from the Jazzies, just to kind of give folks a sense of. I mean, I know they kind of resist the moniker of neo soul, but
do they?
Yeah. Well.
Well, I mean, maybe. It is what it is, Mercedes.
But let's take a listen to "All Up in Your Face." I'm here in the studio with Michael Dennis, Philadelphia filmmaker, promoter, and I guess I would say to a certain degree also
global force and powerhouse.
Yes, exactly.
Here to take over the world. Come on, don't sleep on Mike D. I got like 4 million views. I'm still living at home, but barely. But people know me globally, and that's kind of fun.
But I think what I wanted to say is that I think what you're doing, and what's interesting about when I play music, when I have guests here in the studio, then we kind of continue the conversations kind of off air. And while the Jazzies were on, sort of talking about how you've been over the years developing the YouTube channel, which is Reelblack, and and what I think is exciting about what you've been doing over the years is just kind of documenting, kind of the canon really of kind of living Black filmmakers, actors, comedians, and kind of then making them available to be rediscovered by new audiences.
Essentially, yeah. Well, it's sort of like Mira Nair says, if we don't tell our stories, who will? So again, being in that film school environment and not seeing very many people even looking like me or even so much energy is being spent just trying to get people to understand my perspective when that equipment became available, and getting people to read your script. Even when it was I can get a camera, I can make stuff, and it can be out, and then YouTube comes around. It's like, wow, not only that, I can upload it and people watch it, and then after a while, I can be a partner and they'll actually pay me, and I can pay my phone bill, with this little money coming from these viewers. I said, okay, well, I'll go down that path, So over time, I don't think my taste has changed, but it's always, for any artist, about resources and opportunity. So you go organically where the light is. So for a long time, it's the screening series and curating, and that was a level of narcissism. So like the first 2 years, I made all these films, and I like getting in the paper. I like having, here's Mike's movie's and in the weekly, and then I realized, wow, I don't have to make a film every month to get somebody to write about it. I can host a series and then bring people to town, and I guess somewhere someone's noticing, and that's, we fall in the line with Ava DuVernay, and for I guess 5 years, we were promoting all the Array movies here in the city and hosting events and bringing Ava to Philly Cam and stuff like that, and so everything. I'll be speaking, if you don't know, September 18th at the Screenwriters Mixer on Head House Square at Kavanaugh's Bar. And that will be, I'll have more time to discuss that more, but the rule number one is you never know who's watching, and I've never asked for anything. I mean, there's certain things that I want, but I think a lot of people get frustrated in this town because there is limited resources and opportunity, and they just kind of feel like if I do this one thing, the door's going to swing open. And I had that experience where it didn't swing open early enough on, where I don't even ask. I just do what I want to do, and if people like it, then eventually somebody will come along that says, hey, can you help me do something, and then that is usually the key that opens whatever the next chapter of the book is going to be. So I'm afraid of rejection, Gretchen. I fear rejection, so I just don't even. I'm just Robin Hood all the time.
Well, that's
Santa Claus all the time.
When I reached out to you, it was because you're going to be hosting a Reelblack screening of the film Putney, Swope. But I don't want to talk about that just a second. But when you replied and said, yeah, that would be great, you also then mentioned to me that you're going to be wrapping up the Reelblack screening series.
Yeah, this is season 16. Again, we started in December 2003, so November will be our last event at the Bank Building, 3750 Lancaster. And, I'm still available to curate or program things for other people. We just did 2 shows at the Rotunda, so I'm not disappearing. It's just the audience, literally, for all movies repertory, you're seeing a lot of this happen right now in the city, has migrated to streaming. People, it's almost like you're advertising the Netflix, you're advertising the YouTube, or wherever people are accustomed to catching up with the watered down stream when you do these events. And it's harder with so many filmmakers making film, but signing their contracts so early. There's no window of opportunity for a festival run or anything. And then Black Star's here now, so they're I help them find stuff, and they have the Terrence Nance and all that stuff. It's great, for them. But
so what you're saying is that filmmakers now, the way their contracts with distributors are, is that there's a very short theatrical or festival run, and then they're going right to streaming?
Most films don't even they'll play 2 festivals and that's it. I mean, and I'll have friends of mine, I'll be like, hey, can we show your film? And it's like, the distributor doesn't want to have that. Whereas, 15 years ago, we were fighting to find a distributor for things. That was a window of opportunity for Array. There were literally movies made by Black filmmakers that made it through all the gauntlet, played Sundance, got great reviews, and people didn't feel like they knew how to market them, and they just sat on shelves, and that opened the window. But then Netflix has come in, and now, rather than people take a risk, they'll just sign a deal and make their money back and move on. So
and it's so hard to me because I feel like there's all these films that I want to see, but they just kind of they like disappear.
It's a huge glut, yeah.
Yeah, and so
well, we're missing the experience.
I guess that's what it
right,
is. Yeah,
because it's not just the product of the film; it's all the things that go into like discovering it, dressing up, paying, getting the ticket. They don't even rip a ticket anymore. You know, they scan your phone. You know, so we're part of the experience. I grew up with loving films is different, but what's great for me right now is so much of that spirit from that first night of showing movies at the Prince for free. Everybody on the planet has access to that now on YouTube. So every day I post at least 2 videos. I try to get to 3, and it's things that are discoveries, things that you might not have thought about. You know, like most recently, we put up Red Fox videos, and people, that's intergenerational. Everybody has a connection to Red Fox. So it's not only, and when you watch YouTube, the experience is not only watching it, but reading what people have to say. And that's also very sensitive to me because when I do my interviews, people I get yelled at by these celebrities, and then I fall into the social media trap of you know, Dick Gregory yelling at me and Monique yelling at me. And I don't, I'm a nice person, but somehow people like to choose sides when they're watching these interviews. So I'm not famous enough.
Yeah. Wait. Now there was one other question. Oh, I know what I wanted to ask you. So and then we'll talk about Dick Gregory. But so you mentioned which video store did you work in?
I was at Video Library, the original store. They had 2 stores. Ultimately, on Germantown Avenue, next to where North by Northwest used to be, on Germantown and Mount Airy, which was like, I grew up in Mount Airy. So that was our local mom and pop shop, and it's kind of interesting. I just came back from LA with the manager and buyer. We were hanging out, and it was like a full circle. It was like one of those full circle years for a lot of people.
I mean, and I have to say that one thing, I mean, you know, sometimes I get a little nostalgic on this show, but, you know, in terms of being able to stay connected to new work or classic work, just being able to walk into the video store and have that very, you know, physical experience of like seeing all the things or seeing the stuff.
Tangible,
and I mean, I know that
there's stuff. Viva Video, I'll shout them out. For people that don't know, Viva Video on Lancaster Avenue, there's like managers from TLA. They still have, that's the last video store in the whole city. But yeah.
Oh, well, you know what? I didn't even know that.
Yeah, so you can have that experience, but you know, Tower Records and Borders Books, and it's a shame because the discovery process has shifted. Yeah.
So you mentioned Dick Gregory, and you sort of, but he has those interviews. Have actually kind of helped you build your channel? Is that your YouTube channel?
Yeah, it was the first time. I mean, before it was just the YouTube channel was like sort of a clearinghouse for the content that I was putting on Philly Cam. You know, so it was a magazine style show where every segment was different, you know, so we weren't tuned into the algorithm of people wanting to see more of what they like, you know. So Dick Gregory, he literally, the first time we interviewed him, gave us close to 3 hours of material. And
who is Dick Gregory, just quickly?
Well, Dick Gregory, he's legendary. He's a stand-up comedian, one of the first black stand-up comedians in the world. You know, he and Bill Cosby opened the door for everybody else that you see now of color, so he's a pioneer there, and then a health guru. You know, he transformed his life and became an advocate for social movements and the civil rights movements, and but at the time we met him, I didn't know all these things. You know, I was just going up because there's a movie Sweet Love Bitter that I happen to like, and I was like, oh, he's going to be in town. Let me ask him about the film. He had no interest in talking about the film, but he had all these other, you know, it's like Black Yoda, you know, basically. And so we had 2 hours of this stuff or 3 hours of this stuff, and that was the first time that I broke up the segments. And then it was like, okay, well, if you want more, people start subscribing. The subscriber rate went up, and then we start bringing all these people together that were really interested in knowing more about themselves and discovering about the past. And that's sort of what the channel is. It was always there, but it's more like I'm taking my curating skill of finding these things and crate digging and finding old videos that are in the public domain, race films or educational films or old music soundtracks, and putting them up on the channel. And it's a great discussion, and it's connecting a lot of people's memories. And when we went off for a few weeks, it was one of those things where I didn't realize how much it's needed. I mean, if you're a black person in America, it's very difficult to get through a single day without being hit or having the risk of being hit with some negative thing in the media. So I'm proud to say that our YouTube channel is one of the few, if not the only platform in all of cyberspace where you can have a legitimate experience celebrating your past and your culture without having some negativity slipped in. And then the conversation, that's the advent of YouTube, is that you can watch and conversate, share your thoughts at the same time, and connect people. So I feel really blessed to be the conduit for that. And obviously this Dick Gregory, whatever that force was, that helped us get to this place. And now, so we're closing up shop. November's the last show. We're going to do a showcase of local filmmakers. I'm soliciting work now. If you're a filmmaker of color and you live in Philly, please, and you have a short film, send it to me. I'll look at it and we'll show it. And then I've just been doing sabbaticals to write and learn more and stuff. And about a year, I'll have another piece out.
Oh, that's so great. And time permitting, I'll maybe get to a little bit of music from the soundtrack for Sweet Love Bitter.
Of course.
But I want to talk a little bit about Putney Swope, which is what I brought you here in the first place.
Robert Downey Sr.
Yeah, and
that was one of the movies that we had. It didn't rent. It stayed in the basement, but it's one of the few. I love counterculture. I love maverick filmmakers. I grew up reading Mad Magazine, and we had this movie, and the older people come in, they'd rent it. They knew what it was, and it was at the time in the late '80s. There were very few movies like that. There's not very many films. I mean, you have Airplane. For people that don't know, Putney Swope is a satire about advertising. And it's shot in 1969. This is the 50th anniversary. It was just released on Blu-ray through Vinegar Syndrome, and I'm proud to say that 2 of my interviews with Robert Downey Sr. are included in this Blu-ray collection.
Oh, that's so
you should
cool.
definitely buy that. But yeah, it's one of my favorite movies of all time. It's one of the most hilarious, most subversive things you'll ever see. And it's like, how does this get made? How does Dolomite get made? They're just these oddball, almost one-off kind of movies, and so we want to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the film, and just as we're winding down, I just want to have fun. I don't want to work as hard this Friday. If people want to come, that's fine. If not, I'm gonna have a good time.
So where can folks find out about the screening of Putney Swope?
You can't. I'm revising my website. The website is down, but you can always find information on my Instagram at Reelblack, REELBLACK, and it's at the Bank Building, which is at the corner of 37th and Lancaster, and we're in partnership with PEC, and we're doing it 4 years, and it's a local community organization, and it's Black run. And it's all about the community, so that's why I like being there, and that's part of the Lancaster Second Fridays events.
And what time is the screening?
We're supposed to start at 7:30.
Okay.
We try pay what you want. So you're paying what you want. We start when I feel like it, but generally we're out of there by 9:30 or so. I mean, there's always a good conversation. There's food is part of the thing, and it's always a fun event, but again, people are migrating away, and there's more opportunities for me to be on the other side of the camera. So we just have to embrace the change that is, and maybe do an Eddie Murphy, leave the block starving and then come back even stronger. But trying to be the change I want to see. I mean, I was in 16 years of screening movies, I think there might be 5 that I really were envious about. Like, I wish I could have made that film, and not to say that all the work that we've promoted wasn't great. It's just that, as film becomes more pedestrian, I feel like we still need those classic experiences, you know. I mean, they're doing Coming to America too. It's like, what is the film that's gonna carry over for the next generation to connect them back to, you know, these other legacies, you know. So that's what I spend most of my time thinking about. Oh, how do you know, who's going to make the next classic American film for Black people? Because there's a lot of representation, but it's also a global market, so there's a lot of homogenization as well. So I know my audience very specifically. I want to take the next year and figure out how to make something for them.
Yeah, well, and I think are in exciting times when you have like the Jordan Peels and you have, you know, and you know, other films kind of coming out. Even just the film that I talked about earlier, The Last Black Man in San Francisco. So, you know, it's an exciting time, and I appreciate the thoughtfulness that you've always brought to all that you do, to your love of this city and of the creatives that are here, and what you've done to kind of document culture here in Philadelphia. And you know, I look forward to, you know, where you're going to go next. And
yeah, I'm excited too. And yeah, I mean, Get Out was a great movie. But it hit the zeitgeist so hard that it's like, I don't know, are people watching that 3 and 4 times? You know, but Coming to America, and I mean, it came at a certain time in my life where if it's halfway through, I can turn that on and I'll watch all the way and I'll still laugh, you know, because you know, so that's the experience. Not a zeitgeist. Like we get these big moments. Like, you know, I'm not taking anything away from anybody. Like Donald Glover, he'll drop a video. Or Beyonce, they'll put something out in the middle of the night. Everybody will talk about it for like 3 days, and then they're on to the next thing. You know, so I'm interested in the experience, not necessarily hitting everybody at once, but
over
what
time.
the channel does. Like, again, you know, somebody might not have seen the Dick Gregory videos when they were fresh, but it's still fresh to them.
Right.
You know, so. And then there are people that will watch those same videos again and again and again. And I think that's what I've always loved about movies, and that I don't see enough. So I'm trying to figure out how to create that for today.
All right. Well, Michael Dennis, thank you so much for being a guest here on Pulling Focus. And we're going to head out with a little bit of music that was composed by Charlie Kuva for Robert Downey Sr.'s film Putney, Swope.
Yay. Come Friday, please, everybody.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you, Gretchen.
All right. Thank you.